quit my corporate job to start my company, I was like, the biggest embarrassment, I know I can come back and get my job back, but I'm like, I'm just going to be embarrassed. It's going to be awkward if I'm like, oh yeah, I tried a business, 6 months later it failed. Like, that's what was scary. It was like, I just don't want to, I don't want to be embarrassed.
So in the entirety of my 5 years of the consulting business, I worked with 150 different companies in like dozens and dozens of industries.
When you own a business, right, there's a certain level of things that you do on a consistent basis that maybe you even think aren't special, or they're just like, this is what I do, but that are valuable to somebody else.
Welcome to The Friday Habit with Mark Labriola and Benjamin Manley. The Friday Habit is for small business owners, freelancers, and creatives who are ready to take their business to the next level. Join us as we discover how to apply the strategies we learn to grow our businesses, make more money, and live every day like it's Friday.
And welcome to The Friday Habit. Ben, welcome.
What's going on, Mark?
You're here, as
Good
always.
to see you.
It's so good to see you. Hey, I'm excited to talk to our guest today because you and I have been talking about systems, processes, and org charts, and all these other kind of things. And we have a guy who is into those things. And so his name is Chris Ronzio. If you haven't heard of Trainual, well, you'll know about it by the end of this. But he is the founder and CEO of Trainual. It's a leading SaaS platform that transforms the way small businesses onboard, train, and scale their teams. Chris is the host of the fastest growing companies and Organized Chaos podcasts. Those are two podcasts that he hosts, as well as the author of the best-selling book, The Business Playbook. So, welcome, Chris, to the Friday Habit.
Thanks, Mark. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on. I must sound like the biggest nerd that you thought, let's talk org charts. Who's
That makes me
guy?
happy, though. I am a big nerd, so yeah, that sounds really fun to me.
Awesome. Well, then let's do it.
Well, hey, I got a quick question for you. If you won an unlimited service of any kind for an entire year, what service would most benefit your day-to-day living?
Ooh. My first thought was a masseuse of some kind. I just got this massage chair, though, and I finally caved and got one of those massage chairs on Amazon, but they wouldn't take it upstairs to where I wanted it. And so it's in the middle of my living room downstairs. It's the centerpiece of the room when you walk in.
Are you married? Your
I
wife's
am,
like,
yes.
get that damn chair out of my living room.
Yeah, and then my 4-year-old climbs in, and he's got like bruises on his back.
It's just punching him.
Yeah.
Oh man, those are really good. Yeah, I would agree with that. The first thing I thought too was like a foot massage, like a year foot massage service every day.
That sounds nice. We have a meditation room here at our office, so it's kind of a relaxation room with like the water sounds,
essential
and the
oils,
Himalayan
and,
salt rock, and all that. And so I think relaxing is an important part of recharging for business.
Totally, 100%. Having that like
massage
place where you can kind of go, and it's not often that you're just quiet. You know, it's like you're listening to podcasts, you're watching shows, you're reading emails, you're on the phone, you're texting, whatever it is. And like being present and quiet, sometimes it can be hard to do, which, you know, in the morning, it's like I try to spend a little time meditating, and it's just so funny how just trying to be quiet for like 15 minutes, my brain starts thinking about other stuff. I'm like, no, 15 minutes, that's it. Just sit here and be quiet.
It seems like the longest hour of the day is your 15 minutes of silence.
Exactly.
When I meditate, I mean, that's where all my good ideas come from, though. I don't try to quiet my mind as much. I just let the ideas flow in, and then I stop meditating, and I write down like 25 things that I just thought of.
I love that. Yeah. There's a book called The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. Have you read that book? Oh, it's really good. But yeah, he has a whole thing in there about kind of like thinking.
Man,
time.
that is such a thoughtful book. It really, well, that's a pun, I guess, but it is actually a very like level-headed book. He talks about how you just don't take every guru's answers for everything, but really be thoughtful. How does it apply to you? And he goes through some really good, even questions to ask yourself for thinking time, and like a routine for thinking time. That's been a life-changing book for me, for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll put it on my list.
There you
Thanks,
go. Look at
guys.
that value produced right here. Well,
Amazing.
Chris, tell us a little bit for our audience. Tell us a little bit about kind of where you're from and how you got to where you are right now.
So, how far back do you want me to go?
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up between Massachusetts, Illinois, and North Carolina.
Okay.
So I was born in Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts, moved to Chicago area when I was 2 years old and spent like the first few years of my childhood there. My dad was in the corporate world, so a business guy, but always on the road, never around. And so to me, as a kid, I knew I wanted to be in business because my dad had like a cool briefcase and a tie, and I thought like I want to be like that. But I didn't want to work on the road and be gone all the time. And, he wasn't at a lot of my games and that sort of thing. So when I was 6 or 7 years old, he and a friend decided to start up a little food brokerage in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we moved there for a 3-year stint, which was a pretty cool experience. Change of environment, didn't know anyone. And I got to see him open this little 10-person office. So spent a few years there. And then we started our round trip back. So we went back to Chicago, where we got recruited back. Then we went back to Massachusetts, where I spent the rest of my, high school and
So
and
then
college.
are you a Patriots fan? Were you bummed when Brady left? And then were you like a fan of the Buccaneers?
I feel like I was more of a Tom Brady
Okay.
fan because, you saw him emerge kind of behind Bledsoe. It was like this Cinderella story, and they follow him. But the Patriots changed so much over the years that their team towards the end of Brady was different than the team at the beginning of Brady. So when he went to the Bucs, it was just kind of cool to see him reunite with Gronkowski and follow
I
that story.
hated, it's like someone who's too successful, you kind of hate them. Because the only person I can think about who I never had ill will towards was like Michael Jordan. It's like he kept winning, but there was just something so awesome about it. Brady was almost like Brady, like he won again. It's kind of like Seinfeld with like Newman and Frasier. It's like Brady. It's like, but then it was when he left New England and then went to the Bucs, and then won the Super Bowl. I was like, all right, like he's the GOAT. Like you can't dispute that. Like you can't say, oh, it's the coach and the team, and it's like, no, dude, he went somewhere else and then won a Super Bowl. It's like, all right, you win, dude, you're the GOAT.
The morning of that last Super Bowl with the Bucs, I was looking up signed Tom Brady jerseys because I figure like, all right, if he wins today, these are just going to go up in value. And so I bought one that morning. He won the Super Bowl. The next day, they were already like up 20%.
Go.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. So you make it back to Mass, and you graduate high school. And did you kind of have an entrepreneurial spirit within you at a young age where you're like, all right, I'm going to start mowing lawns, or in Ben's cases, making flyers and business cards for people?
Yeah.
Totally. I had so many little kid businesses. I think I had 16 business cards before high school.
Yes.
It was like I would open up, Microsoft Paint or whatever it was at the time, and I would get the little race car clip art and type like Chris's car wash, and then print them all out. And so it's not.
That's exactly
the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So I had all of those businesses when I was 4 was my first little car wash business because my uncle, he emptied out his pocket. He had $4 bills, and he's like, I'll give you this money if you wash my car. And at the time, that was how much it cost to buy a Ninja Turtle action figure, which was my currency in the world.
Exactly.
And so I started washing cars. Like all my neighbors would bring their car to our driveway, and then the businesses got a little more sophisticated. I would do like cleaning people's yard furniture at the end of winter, like to get their deck ready for the spring. I did the landscaping business, mulching. I did like selling wrapping paper and selling candy bars, the lemonade stands. So really all the legal businesses that kids can do, I did. And then it got more into tech. So when I think I was 12 or 13, I got one of the early CD burners.
Yep.
And I started asking my friends on the bus to like let me borrow all their CDs, and I would make copies of their CDs, and then I would bring all the copies back on the bus, and I'd sell them, and it was 50% to the person who provided the master copy and 50% to me.
There you go.
And so the first affiliate program, and then, when I was 14, 15, that's when I started my first real business, like that I paid taxes on. It was a video production company. We did youth sporting events, and it started just at my school doing like the soccer games and football games, things like that. And then we started picking up tournaments all over Massachusetts, all over New England, up and down the East Coast. And I ended up running that business for 12 years. So that was where I learned a ton about business.
So you started at 14 or 15, so you were still doing that at 26 or so, 27? That's awesome.
Yeah. So so much of my of what I do today came from that business, because Trainual, all about systems, processes, and SOPs and training. We in that business would find contract sports organizations that had tournaments all over the US. And our job was to staff crews of camera operators and sales reps and production managers at all those events, take orders online, and then ship the videos around the world. And so we had to have a really consistent product. And so I didn't know it at the time, but we were remote training and onboarding people around the country that we'd find on Craigslist. And then we were developing processes on how to make that business work.
Wow, that's really interesting. So at what point did you say, all right, I got to figure out a different way to like make money or level up or get out of the sports video production business?
So for me, we were growing a lot. I mean, I finished college in 2008. We grew like 300% through 08, 09, like that whole recession. And what I learned was that memories are pretty recession proof. Like when your child competes in like the state championship, you're going to find the $20 to buy the video, even if things are not so great. And so we kept bringing on events, we kept growing. And to me, the challenge was, how do I totally optimize our process to where parents can, fill out a form on an iPad and buy a video on a website and see a 30-second preview and download the kid's video. And that's what got me going, was the challenge of innovating our process. And the last couple of years, it felt like we weren't innovating as much. We were just adding on more and more events. And I was getting a little looking for something else to do. So at this time, I had joined an entrepreneurship group, like a mastermind type thing. And I was more interested in helping my friends with their businesses than really like doing mine. So what I did was I promoted our director of operations to be president of the company. I took myself off payroll, and I stepped out of the business for the next year and started just consulting, dabbling with other businesses, and then ended up selling my video company and creating a full-time kind of little boutique consulting. So that was my next stop.
That's awesome. So it sounds like it was like, okay, this is not exactly challenging me in the way I want anymore. You kind of like, I got some of this figured out. It's pretty streamlined. It's scaling. That's great. But you're like, all right, I want to try a new challenge. And you're kind of more interested in like taking the things you learned and sharing it with other people,
Yeah, I felt like my experience was really narrow. All I had ever really done was this video production business, and I'd learned so much about business. But when I started hearing like what the retail store and the medical office and the graphic design company and the all these businesses are dealing with, it was like firing the sparks in my brains, like, oh, I want to solve that problem. So I knew I was getting burnt out with going to all these events and traveling and
how did it feel like when you switched that consulting? Did you feel, because I do a lot of consulting with people with similar businesses too. I don't call it that. I just kind of like hang out with them and give them advice, and we work on stuff together. And I always worry like, okay, if I go into consulting, am I qualified to help these other businesses? Did you struggle with that at all? Or are you like, no, I got this? Or like, how was that the transition of like consulting with other types of companies?
Yeah, so it didn't start as consulting. It kind of started as me volunteering to just go in and help people. And then I would spend a day with someone's company, and it was like my friends were saying, I feel like I have to pay you for this. Like you're doing so much around here. Like, what is your rate? And I'm just like, I don't know.
$1 million.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, totally. There was definitely that fear of like the imposter syndrome kind of thing. Like, do I even know what I'm doing? And you think a lot of people say they're a consultant and that means they're
Right.
unemployed. So I was like, how to like how do I actually make this a business? How do I work with real companies? And so rather than just doing ad hoc kind of little projects and hourly things, I focused on doing retainer projects where people would pay me so much a month for like a 6-month deal or a 12-month deal, and I would really get deep in their business. And so to me, I was just cobbling together a bunch of different industries and companies and making more than I had previously made in my video business. It was a great way to bridge the gap.
Now, when you were doing that, would you kind of take one thing on at a time and then just really focus on that and then find the next thing, take that on? Or were you spinning multiple plates at a time when you're doing the consulting?
At the beginning, it was a lot of just random project management, trying to figure out like what do they need done, and I would roll my sleeves up and help do it. It was kind of like I was a fractional manager or COO or something, where the owner of the business had whatever they were working on, and then they had this backlog of stuff that they wish they could get done, but they didn't have anyone that could oversee it and see it to the finish line. And so I would come in and get the extra stuff done. So after doing that for a year and a half or so, I started to look at what is the consistent thing I'm doing for everyone. And I was hearing a lot about productizing services at that point. And so I came up with a package for all the new clients that I would work with, and I called it the Organized Chaos Package. That was the name of my business. So that's
Cool.
where the podcast name came from. And so I had 2 packages. I had a 1-day package and a 3-day package where I would work with companies to get myself oriented to their business. So I was like onboarding myself as quickly as possible to know everything I needed to know. And that involved their org chart, their roles and responsibilities. It was like a huge intake process to understand the business model, all the people. And then I would go through and do these interviews with all their people to understand what's broken, like what needs work around here, what are the suggestions people are making, what are the ideas that people have. And I would collect all that and look for the common denominators, the stuff that like 5 people are saying, why aren't we doing this? And then the last piece was prioritizing that and deciding what are we going to work on. So my project, these intake projects were exactly the same every time. There was a formula to it, so I could churn through them. I could hire people to help me with them. And then it created a menu of stuff that we could sell the retainer packages for. And that was the whole model.
And that sounds like so much fun to be able to just like dive into a business and do that. Like, so my company does website design. It's called Knapsack, and we're very productized when it comes to that kind of stuff. We have like 1-day, 2-day, 3-day packages where we'll do like live design with people, and we've got strategy session built in ahead of time.
Nice.
There's a whole like system to it. But one thing I really love about it is in those initial discovery meetings is wrapping your mind around a new business in like 30 minutes. Like, how do you digest that super quickly? That just sounds like so much fun, getting to go in there and actually help the business even more though than just like building a website for them, getting in there and be like, what are the real problems and how do we like solve those? That sounds really rewarding.
Yeah, it was so fun. And so in the entirety of my 5 years of the consulting business, I worked with 150 different companies in like dozens and dozens of industries. I got exposure to so many cool ideas that like, oh, here's what they're doing in a plumbing company that could apply to this restaurant or here, And it was just such great exposure, and but it also was, again, foundational to Trainual, because so much of onboarding myself to their companies was understanding like, what do you need to know to get up and running? And that's what you would need to teach anyone to get up and running in their business.
That makes a ton of sense. Well, so how did that transition? Were you noticing those patterns and you're like, okay, how can I organize this even better? Is that kind of how Trainual was born? Like, and how did that process work?
Yeah, so Trainual was it was a very natural evolution. So Trainual started actually as a product within my consulting company. I was doing a lot of these packages for people. One of the most recurring things I was doing was coming up with roles and responsibilities, responsibility matrices type things, and then standard operating procedures of like, let's nail down this workflow, this process, whatever it is. And I was, at the time, recording a lot of screen sharing things and making Google Docs, and I'd put together, folders or Dropbox folders. And I thought that it would be great if there was just a centralized place. Like, where does someone's whole business, the knowledge of their business, live? I'm sure you guys have read books like The E-Myth and where it says you need an operations manual or a franchise manual or whatever it is. And I thought, well, how do I make one of those as a business aside from just spinning up a blank Google Doc? So I was working with this retail client of mine. They were a custom T-shirt sales company. You'd go in with your idea and they'd print a T-shirt. And they hired a lot of college kids, and so their turnover was like 300% a year because, you hire people for a semester, they go home, and now you entirely replace your workforce. And every time they were bringing new people on, they had to spend like a full day training them, and they had this 70-page document of like how their screen press works and how to do gift cards at the cash register and so like all these things were coming together, and I thought, like, what if I make a tool for this? So there were a couple kids from ASU here locally in Arizona that were engineers that could develop. I brought in another contract engineer, and I spent about $10,000 to make this little prototype of like a onboarding training app, and that was the first version of Trainual. That was in 2015. Wow. From 2015 to 2017, that's all it was a little product of my consulting company. I gave the product free to my clients, and if they referred someone that I wasn't consulting for, it was like $49 a month, and you can use this little tool. But I wasn't trying to grow a SaaS company. I was trying to grow a consulting business.
Wow. Yeah, did you have a question?
I was gonna say, yeah. I just want to know. I'm just like on the edge of my seat. I'm like, what's next? Then what happened? I'm just like, I'm following with you. I'm just like, this is really exciting because I just feel like I relate to a lot of things you're saying, and I feel like I'm on a similar path as you, but like 2 or 3 steps behind you. You know what I mean? So it's just inspiring to kind of see where you're going, because I'm like, I can see myself in a similar path as far as creating some software that would help other web design companies do a process similar to ours. So I'm like, it's interesting to me to hear you talk about it. So yeah.
Well, yeah. And I think it's interesting too, because I feel like when you own a business, right, there's a certain level of things that you do on a consistent basis that maybe even think aren't special, or they're just like, this is what I do, but that are valuable to somebody else. I think a lot of times, because I've owned a business for the past 14 years and had to do so many different things, it's like, well, yeah, of course, like, you need this or you got to do that. But there's so many people out there that are like, oh my gosh, like, where do I even begin? It's like, we do podcasts, and to me, it's like, I'm in podcasts all day, and I know about all the gear and all the things you need and syndication, and it's just like, this is so easy. But to someone else, they're like, oh my gosh, starting a podcast seems really overwhelming. And it's like, oh.
Yeah. You undervalue the things that come so naturally to you or that you're good at, which is why it was so hard for me to charge for consulting. I was like, I just naturally want to get in here and make things work better. And Ben, it's also cool, like, when you can develop something that is based on your own process or your own experience or like scratching your own itch. I think that's the most powerful kind of product. And so we were like, my video business was like Trainual client number 1. Like, I wish I had this. So I was almost developing it for my past self, thinking like, how would I have done this better? All right. So where to from there? All right. Around the same time, like 2014, 2015, a friend of mine, one of my best friends, started this company called Design Pickle. Maybe you've heard of them. They're like an unlimited graphic design company. And when he was getting started, he didn't have any kind of budget. And so he asked if I would do my whole consulting thing with him, but do it for equity. And so I said, okay, sure, I'll do that. And so I did that for a few people. And Design Pickle in particular was really scaling. Like, they figured out how to do marketing and have like this paid ads funnel to get to their service. And so as just kind of like an insider in their company, I was watching the success of how you can market something and get them to your website and get them through a trial and get some recurring revenue. So it was really interesting to watch that happen. In 2017, I started thinking, all right, I could take on another equity project like this, or maybe I could just try Trainual as its own thing. Like I own 100% of that. I'm using it for my clients. Maybe there's a business there. And so I had 5 employees at the time in my consulting business. And so we all met around the conference room, and we kind of just kicked around the idea and said, well, what's the worst case scenario if we try to do this SaaS thing?
Right.
We can go back to consulting. We know that works. So it was kind of a cold turkey sort of thing where we just said like, all right, starting January of 2018, no more consulting. We're going to wrap up our current projects, and we're going to just give this SaaS thing a shot.
That's awesome.
So when you did that, was it scary in a way? Like, did you feel, I mean, I know you kind of said like, hey, we can always just go back to consulting, but was it something where you kind of had a fear of like, will people like this? Will this be something that seems valuable to the masses? And at what point did you kind of feel like, oh, wow, this is working and people are signing up and they're, purchasing our SaaS? Like, what did that look like and feel like?
I would say it was more emotionally like reputation scary than it was financially scary, because we had the backstop of like we could go back to consulting. I was confident we could dig ourselves out of whatever like few month loss kind of thing it was. It was more that I knew if I was going to do this, I had to go all in and tell everyone, here's what I'm doing. And so I had built up, 150 consulting clients and wasn't working with all of them, but like over the years, 150, I had this big newsletter that I had a few thousand subscribers to, and I was recommending little processes. And so I just went out across the newsletter, across my email list, everyone I knew. And I was like, I'm doing this now. And that was the scariest part is, I felt like I needed to do that to get some momentum and support from people, but I knew that it would be embarrassing to be like, that didn't work. That was
exactly. I mean, it's the same thing when I quit my corporate job to start my company. I was like, the biggest embarrassment, I know I can come back and get my job back, but I'm like, I'm just going to be embarrassed. It's going to be awkward if I'm like, oh yeah, I tried a business 6 months later, it failed. Like, that's what was scary. It was like, I just don't want to, I don't want to be embarrassed, which is kind of silly, but I wonder if that holds other people back. But
I think, and now as like, we've hired a lot of people that at some point had their own business, and I always look at resumes and think, I love that they started something, and even if it didn't work out, it shows that you took that risk and you've got the initiative, and so I think there's nothing to lose to starting something like that, and so it's definitely like a internal, one of those crazy fears.
How did it work with switching from consulting to a SaaS company? Just like the skills you had on board with the people on your team, how did you fit those people to skills in the new one? Did you have to let some people go, hire other people? Did you try to fit, like, how did you do that? Did people get training to do new roles, or was it actually pretty similar work?
It was pretty seamless. So fortunately, the people that we had in my consulting company, we had a developer, a full-time developer, because we were stitching together oftentimes people's APIs and Zapier and trying to make processes work for people. So I'd hired a developer like 7 months earlier. And then we had a UI UX designer, but she wasn't really doing much design. She was doing more of like consulting project management. I had taken her out of UX design to like come into, figured she could map out a workflow in someone's business. And so it was just really adaptable that we were able to say, perfect, SaaS company, we've got a designer, we've got a developer. And then we had our one of our like project managers that was kind of like also an assistant of mine. She sort of spun into a customer support, customer success sales role. And so that was a change, but she was able to just adapt and do that. She's had almost every role in the company now. Today she's our chief of staff. So she was my first employee. And then my brother joined on as like our CMO. And so he had done some marketing, go-to-market stuff for my consulting clients. And when we wanted to do the SaaS business, he's like, I'm on it. Website, ads, like copy, I'll do that part. So it was pretty lucky.
That's so cool. And was it something where everybody was really excited about it? Did you have to kind of get people on board and be like, hey, here's why I think this is a good idea? Was it hard to sell it to the team, or were they like, oh man, this sounds great?
the way I sold it. So we had that meeting in the conference room, and I told everyone, like, your jobs are secure.
That's always good. The first thing, like, okay.
Yeah. 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 I had like a couple weeks earlier gotten a new logo designed on Fiverr and ordered a bunch of t-shirts. So I came in with swag.
It's like,
and I think that helped soften the
free
blow.
swag, and it looks real. It's like, oh, this is really happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was like sweatshirts and t-shirts, and now what do you all think? It was like, okay, cool. Do I have a choice? No.
Are we voting or? That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then you launched. How big are you guys today?
People, or
Oh
we have
my
81
gosh,
people.
wow.
We've got 7,000 or so companies using the platform
cool.
around the world.
Wow, that's congratulations.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. I think
you.
that's like, one of those things where when something works out, and I'm sure you struggle with all sorts of other issues, and what's going to be the next thing, right? Like, okay, now I did this. Like, I think I want to make mobiles for a living.
That would be a jump. I think the cool thing about this business is it really is so connected to everything I've done since I had my own business. I'm super passionate about, entrepreneurs and small businesses. And, you see anyone that's had a business or worked in a small company knows the burden of that business and how it kind of can take over your life and how hard it is to make it work. And I feel like this is a problem I could work on forever, is just trying to make that easier, to make it more organized, to make businesses work better. One of the other things I saw all the time in my consulting business is the people that worked at companies that were unhappy just didn't have a clear sense of what their role was, how success was measured, what their next path was in the company. They just felt like it was a stepping stone and they weren't really attached to the business. Whereas the ones that were really bought in knew exactly what was expected of them. They knew that they were crushing it. They knew what the promotion they were going after was. And so I think a product like Trainual can really help get the company and their people more aligned, because you're saying, here is how everything works. Here is how you work. Here's how you succeed. And that's what people are looking for. Even though it sounds so simple, so many companies just don't do it.
So my company, we have, there's 7 of us right now, and we actually just hired our 8th. But we're working on it. I've always kind of kept it like, hey, everybody, kind of has to pitch on different things. You kind of know your main role, but then there's always, of course, things that you have to help with here and there on other teams, right? And I've never been like a big fan of titles and stuff, because I feel like sometimes titles can be used as a like, oh yeah, I'll make you CFO, even though it's like a 2-person company, or you know what I mean? It's like, it feels like this feels fake. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I know that there's good reasons for that too, but I just feel like sometimes it's used in a weird way. And so I've always kind of kept it like, all right, well, yeah, here's what your responsibilities are now, but you don't necessarily have a title and stuff. Well, it's funny. My wife actually just started working for my company, and the first thing she said is like, I think you need way more clarity on what everybody, like what their role is, because like for her, she's like, and I'm like, well, everybody's responsible to pick up stuff if something falls, and everybody kind of knows what they're supposed to do, like day to day, but it's still not super clear. She said for her, it's hard because she doesn't know, like, I just keep working harder and harder, and I don't know when I'm done. And so it's more stressful. Like, she might feel guilty for something she wasn't even responsible for. So it causes all these additional things. And so her bringing that up, like, it was just interesting, because now I'm like, okay, yeah, I do need to create a lot more clarity. So I'm literally working on stuff right now where I'm actually working on creating a company directory, an org chart, like defining roles. I was just starting to realize that roles, I never went to business school, so I'm just starting to realize that like roles and your org chart can be different things, and that you can do, like, you fulfill multiple roles, and how to organize and describe those things. So I literally actually just created a free trial on Trainual like earlier today. I'm like looking through there and I'm like, oh, this is so good. So yeah, I think this Trainual for me is like it's like a godsend of like, oh, this is exactly kind of what I've been looking for, like some way to organize all that stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, you said it, the roles and responsibilities aren't really a thing when you've got like 2, 3, 4, 5 people, because it's kind of like when you've got enough people that would like help you move the mattress up the stairs or something. It's like, we all
you just kind of know what to do. Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean? You don't need more response, but when you've got more people than that and you don't have oversight into what everyone's doing at all times, that's when the people themselves need a little bit more of the fallback expectations. They need to know, like, well, what do I do, and where is the line between what I do and what he or she does? And so, I mean, you're at the perfect size to be working on that.
That's awesome. Tell us about the book. So the Business Playbook. I'm assuming it was like, hey, I should write a book.
It was like
and then I did. That's as easy as it was, right?
It was, except the initial I should write a book was right when Trainual was starting. I thought, oh, this will be a great way to talk about what Trainual is, why people need it. I started trying to write it, and then I realized all my experience really is in my consulting business right now. This thing hasn't even taken off. And so I put it down and decided, like, let me make sure this business scales and takes off, and then it's only going to get better based on all the best practices and things I found out. And so last year we came back to it. We were 3 years into the business. We had thousands and thousands of customers around the world. We've got customer success teams. We're telling people how to build out their playbook. And I was like, okay, now I can just like package this advice together and share it. So Mark, you I think you led in the intro with the entire subtitle of the book. So thank you for doing that. And kind of a cool thing with this book is I talked about the E-Myth earlier. That was such a transformational book for me. I read it in high school, and it's what taught me to get off the camera in my video business, and that there's a distinction between like running the camera versus running the business and these different roles. And so I was fortunate a couple years ago to connect with Michael E. Gerber, who wrote that book. And in that book, they say you need this operations manual, this prototype. And that's what my book is all about. It's like, okay, you need one of those. Exactly how do you create one? What goes in it? How do you make it? Who's involved with creating it? How do you roll it out to your team? How do you keep it updated? That's what the Business Playbook is. And Michael Gerber wrote the foreword to the book, which was so cool to see it come full circle.
Yeah, I wish I had read that book in high school. That would really be helpful. I feel like I discovered a lot of that stuff on my own, and then people keep saying, hey, you should read the E-Myth, and I finally read it like 2 years ago. I was like, yeah, I should have read this like a decade ago.
It should be required reading. I don't know, like any business school or any high school with a business program.
It's so good.
Everybody should read that.
True.
It's so easy.
Yeah, it's timeless too, you know? They even have the revised version.
I know. The original one came out in the 1970s, and it's like it's totally withstood the test of time. So yeah, if someone that's listening is wanting to do this kind of work like you've been talking about, Ben, then my book is the framework for all the different sections of your playbook, what you should write down, what you should focus on first, like what's going on in your business that makes this relevant and useful.
That's awesome.
All that
and how
stuff.
do you connect that, just out of curiosity from the marketing side, how do you connect that with Trainual? Do you like reference Trainual in the book or vice versa, or how do you cross market those things?
I do a couple times in the book, but I wanted it to be not a book by Trainual and about Trainual, but a book by me as, read this, get value out of it, use whatever tool you want. And so we say that a lot in the book. The connection is that Trainual, our website, features the book. We've given it out at conferences that we've done. When I do speaking events, I'll bring it. So there's definitely a connection, because if you read the book and everything resonates with you, then Trainual is like a turnkey product to do what's in the book. So there's like a native connection that we don't need to overtly be trying to sell.
Yep, that totally makes sense.
At what size do you think a company kind of needs a playbook? There's a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of running guns, solo creatives and whatnot. At what point do you say like, yeah, hey, you should start doing X, Y, and Z?
For most businesses, I would say it's around 5 people. It's around when you've got enough division of responsibility that you've kind of got department heads, and now you're starting to think about like, all right, well now what if I put 2 people or 3 people in that group? How do we divide up what one person used to do? So that's where, and when you've got like 3, 4, 5 people, you're starting to crystallize the core values and culture of the company. And that's really what you want to like codify in the playbook. So that's a great time to do it. People could do it sooner. Like we have a lot of people that maybe they're starting a franchise and they need to do it from day one, or maybe they're, it's not their first business and they've had this experience and they don't want to clean the mess up later. They don't want the process debt or whatever, they want to set it up right. And so I think people can do it at different times, but it's at least when you've got some like division of responsibility, some semblance of culture and values, and you want to make sure that you lock this in and this is consistent for everyone you bring on.
That makes sense.
That's fantastic. Well, Ben,
Yep.
you got any takeaways for us?
So usually I write down like 20 takeaways from a conversation, and I completely forgot because I was enjoying the conversation too much. You're like looking at the notes. You're like, there's no notes in here. I'm usually like getting all the pieces of gold out of the conversation and writing them down.
You're 100%.
I got nothing. It was all good.
That's fantastic.
It was all good.
No takeaways.
No takeaways.
This was so
I'm
good,
taking the whole thing
terrible.
away. No,
It was one massive
it was
takeaway.
so good.
No, I mean, I feel like the takeaways are, continue to push yourself towards growth. And as you're doing that, to make sure that you don't create more work for your future self by doing things wrong, do them right.
Well, yeah.
And get the playbook.
Well, I was going to say too, I think just like the feeling I got from this conversation was just like that, Chris, like you're a type of person that is a generous person that just wants to help people succeed. I can see that through that you've learned a lot of stuff. And I think that's a good lesson just in general. It's like, if you're curious and you just want to like help people, like I think good things will come to you as you work hard and like take that stuff and share it with other people. You seem very open-handed, generous. You're not like writing a book to be a lead generator only, I just like, hey, like this is like something you're doing to actually help people. So I think that's just a good lesson for everybody, including myself.
Thank you. So if anybody gets anything from this, it's go do free consulting.
Right. Got it.
just give it away. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, hey, where can people connect with you to, find more about Trainual, more about, the book, more about what you're into?
Yeah, the book's easy. Anywhere books are really sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, whatever, the Business Playbook. You can find me at Chris Ronzio on Instagram or LinkedIn is where I tend to hang out. And Trainual is just kind of like it sounds, like a training manual, trainual.com.
Awesome. Hey, and thanks, guys, for listening to The Friday Habit. If you go to thefridayhabit.com, there you'll find show notes for this episode. You can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. And at the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit system that will show you how to set aside one full day each week dedicated to working on your business instead of in your business.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review in the Apple Podcasts app. If you have a question or topic you'd like us to cover, don't forget to record us a quick voice memo and send it to hello@thefridayhabit.com.
That's right. Until next time, live every day like it's Friday.